The Great War Western Front. This is a real-time strategy game that released early on in 2023, and it's had some pretty good success. It's all about being World War I, and it is very much World War I, with a lot of tactical battles happening on these separate maps that take place, and the terrain you face in these maps is really dependent on what's going on the world map. Now, the world map is where the grand strategy portion of the game happens. It's turn-based, and there's a tech tree, and you control cities and deploy units and move them around the board. But then when the battles take place, you get to set up your defenses with trenches, because of course, trench warfare in World War I, that's gonna be very, very important to historical accuracy, if nothing else. So there's tons of trenches, you set up turret placements, you can have balloons to expose the fog of war, there's airstrikes with bombers and fighters to fight off the bombers, and all sorts of things happening. Artillery, also great, just blasting away at the land, creating crater after crater. Great War Western Front, I had a little bit of an experience with, and I really enjoyed it. Speaking of how everyone enjoys it, it's got mostly positive reviews on Steam, floating just over the 70% mark, which is pretty decent. And by the way, this is from Petroglyph, a developer known for doing real-time strategies. So, Great War Western Front is one that I think is a very good one to jump into, especially if you're looking for that World War I aesthetic. Now, yes, I started this video with content immediately. If you liked that, press the like button. Now let's go on to the second game on this list, which is Company of Heroes 3, which, okay, I know this video is called the best RTS released so far. That doesn't mean that they're all phenomenal games. I mean, this is what we have. This is what has released so far, and there are a lot worse than anything I've mentioned on this list. So Company of Heroes 3 unfortunately had a bit of a rough start, and things didn't go exactly all the way positive. Now, for transparency, I was sponsored to check out Company of Heroes 3 on release, but this is not sponsored. So Company of Heroes 3 is meant to be bigger and better than ever, taking the series to new heights, but it seems like it's got mixed reviews on Steam. Like over 10,000 reviews, and it's floating around the 50% mark, so it's really a 50-50 on the opinion. And just for basic gameplay, it's Company of Heroes in a nutshell. You know, you've got squad-based gameplay, you build up some buildings, not a full-scale base kind of thing, but some buildings to train units, and you send squads around to control points. Artillery is great, and all of that. Now, the criticisms seem to be split in two different directions. So basically, here's what I can tell. Company of Heroes 1 was going in one direction, okay? Company of Heroes 2 took the game in a slightly different direction, and a lot of people didn't like Company of Heroes 2 because it was different from Company of Heroes 1. And now Company of Heroes 3 is sort of seemingly more like the first game, but also kind of different. So it feels like it's taking the game or taking the series in another direction. So I feel like expectations are all messed up here. The vibe I'm getting from Company of Heroes as a whole is Company of Heroes 1 is for one audience, Company of Heroes 2 is for another audience, and Company of Heroes 3 is for another audience. If you like one, you probably won't like the others. That's what I'm kind of getting, but I don't know, let me know what you think about this. Either way, at 50% review ratings, but over 10,000 reviews, a lot of people have played Company of Heroes 3, and it's definitely one of the best RTS to release this year, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's one of the best RTS ever. This is 2023, and we're only just past the halfway mark of the year, so this is what we've got so far. More RTS are releasing down the line. Now, for an RTS that is sort of mixing with FPS, it's Silica. Now, I always like this approach of mixing FPS or third-person shooters with RTS, being a Savage, the Battle for New Earth fan myself. The original game, not the sequel, the first one. And of course, you know, elements of that in like older Battlefield where you could be a commander and you can give orders to people and stuff like that. That's always one of my favorite mixes of genres, but it tends to fall flat so many times. But Silica seems to have a pretty good start here. It released on 3rd May 2023, and 3 factions battle for control over the planet of Baltaras. You can lead above as a commander or experience the action firsthand, zoomed in, either alone or with friends. And you can join one of the 2 human armies or hunt the humans down as territorial aliens. So all of this feels really good, and the reviews are reflecting that. Floating around the 75 to 80% mark on Steam reviews, this has gone quite well. Now, it's not fully released, but it did release into early access, and they're looking for a full release in 2024, but who knows what early access means anymore. The game is playable, the game is buyable, and the reviews are coming in. So Silica, I think I'm just gonna go with, okay, you got the early access release and the full release, and I'm gonna count them both as releases, and I think that's the only fair way to do it, okay? But yeah, you can check out Silica if the premise sounds interesting to you. Now, as I was mentioning, not every game on this list is going to be the best RTS ever, but it is one of the best RTS so far this year from the limited pickings we have. And I do have to mention The Settlers' New Allies, which I know is a game, one that got mixed to average reviews. It's a new Settlers game that's very much more of an RTS than anything else, and I think that's where the problems began. Taking an IP which is more of a builder logistical management kind of game and focusing on the RTS combat elements, that already felt kind of wrong, and I think that led to the troubled development of The Settlers, which was delayed again and again over the years. And it did actually release in February this year, and labeled as The Settlers' New Allies, but it's supposed to be a reboot of the series, but my guess is that it's just gonna kind of stop right here. It might need another reboot after this. I mean, it looks great, but it's just, I think it's just not for fans of The Settlers. But then again, there's been so many Settlers games over the years. I mean, Settlers 1 and 2 are very different from 3 and 4, which are then very different from 5 and 6. Like, The Settlers is, again, like, for very different audiences through the series. And The Settlers' New Allies, I think, targeted a completely new audience, and none of the existing Settlers players wanted this. So it's like you're advertising and marketing to people who aren't gonna like your game. Like, it might as well be called something else at that point, right? If this wasn't called The Settlers at all, it might have been received better. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But oh well, we got The Settlers' New Allies. Next is probably one of the more surprising and unexpected successes of the year. It's called Mechabellum. It's an auto-battler taking place on a newly colonized planet of Pharaoh, and you're the commander of an army of mechs fighting it out in massive PvP battles. Now, I did not expect an auto-battler to gain any kind of traction, or too much traction, with like the RTS community and fans of RTS, but Mechabellum has gone down very well. Like, it's getting very positive reviews on Steam, over 80%, closer to 90% positive rating. And this is an early access release, early access released in May earlier this year, and it looks great and people are loving it. Like, it's just going very, very well. And if you like mechs and these massive battles, yeah, sure, okay, you're not building up bases like a traditional RTS or collecting resources. It is an auto-battler, but there's something about it that's just clicking with the RTS community, so it's gotta go on this list just for that, if nothing else. So you can have a look at Mechabellum, and totally understandable if it's not for you. If you're looking for a traditional RTS, Mechabellum isn't gonna be it, but it's so hard to define what an RTS is. Everyone has their own little definitions of what an RTS is. Does it need base building? Does it need resource collection? We can debate that at length, but I think the main point is a lot of fans of the RTS genre are liking Mechabellum, and that's kind of what's important, rather than going over semantic discussions of what is an RTS, although that is a fun discussion I love to have anyway. Okay, now as a bonus, there are of course a lot of RTS still scheduled to release this year, and if you want to see those, go watch the full RTS video that I'll link down below. But as a bonus mention, I will mention here what wasn't announced when I made that video, which is Total War Pharaoh. This is not released, it's releasing supposedly in October, and it's a new Total War game set in ancient Egypt. It's Total War, so we kinda know what to expect. Just as a warning, Total War has had its ups and downs. It goes all the way around in terms of quality and how people receive it. Some people love one Total War, hate another. Some become very, very popular, and others just fall flat and get quickly forgotten. So this could go either way. It could be amazing, it could be mid, it could be a complete failure. But ancient Egypt is always a popular setting, and it'll be exciting to see Total War handle that setting in its own Total War style. So that's releasing in October, later on down this year, if it doesn't get delayed. But I would, just personally, I wouldn't pre-purchase it. I would wait until we see what it exactly is, and then maybe jump in. Alright, there is your update for the RTS genre of gaming for 2023. A bit late past the halfway point, but I'm thinking of doing more of these kind of videos because making annual list videos for upcoming games, it's easy to miss so much, like Total War Pharaoh. Things are just not announced at the time of making a video. So I feel like making a follow-up video after 6 months from the initial video of upcoming RTS games or whatever genre makes a lot of sense. So you guys can subscribe to keep track of all of these upcoming games, and then maybe get a recap of how they went after release. I have called 2023 the year of the RTS, and I know it's not really feeling like it quite yet, but let's wait for the releases through the second half of 2023 and see how they go down, because there's a lot of RTS scheduled for the end of this year. We'll see if they get delayed. Maybe 2024 will end up being the year of the RTS, but there's a lot. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and found it useful. Go check out the full RTS list for upcoming games or any of the other genres I cover, and I'll see you there. Thank you.